Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Community TLV Q1 Meetup. We're thrilled to have you. Before we start, we're going to have some community updates. First of all, we're trying to understand if physical event pre-corona times is still possible this year. And we need your inputs. So please, if you can devote a minute to answer this survey through this QR code, this will really help us understand if we can do a physical event this year or not. You can use either the QR code or the URL above, bit.ly/community TLV-event survey 21. Second of all, we have the next meetup already in place, the next community meetup. It's going to be a Cloud Native and OSS together with Production Django. It will be next month. This is the event of the first hybrid event after Corona times at the offices of Aerospike at Brain Embassy, Tel Aviv. The physical attendance is capped to 50 people, according to all Tav Yarok regulations for any COVID-19 events. So please put in your calendars, 20th of April, 5:30 p.m., and we will really glad to see you all there. Last update for now, we have an ongoing call for papers for the meetups of the community, such as this one. You're more than welcome to add the link to the favorites and submit any ideas for talks that you have. The link is papercall.io/community/TLV/meetups. And please, we will happy to hear from you. Okay, so before we start, this is what's going to happen in the next session. We're going to have 3 talks from OSS, Cloud Native and OSS TLV, Statscraft, and DevOps TLV. After that, we're going to have a short Q&A panel with all of our panelists with questions that you're going to send us through the Discord channel. That's it. So if you have any questions, please go to our Discord channel in bit.ly/community TLV-join Discord, or also in the banner here, and you can submit any questions that you have. Okay, so let's start. I'm gonna introduce the first speaker that we have, Yair Etziony.
Hi.
Hey, Yair, what's up?
I'm fine. One person is writing to me that in his WhatsApp that he doesn't see that we started the transmission. Maybe that's something. Maybe it's his problem. Okay. Yeah, he did refresh. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Yair, you're the head of operations at Polar Quad, Germany.
Yes.
You're gonna speak to us about how to define DevOps concept better.
Yes. So yeah, the talk is more conceptual, philosophical, because I studied history, and for me, as we will see in the talk, I see, because I'm a consultant, I've seen so many mistakes done by companies who are running to do DevOps, and then they don't understand why they failed. Oops, their DevOps transformation. So the whole idea is to ask the right questions and to see if we can somehow break concepts that people do in at least in Europe. I could see that these concepts repeat themselves, same anti-patterns. So yeah.
Sounds awesome. So take it away.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hop. Just a second. So. Just a second, it's uploading. Do you see my screen?
I can see your screen, so I think everyone could.
So as you can see, Polar Quad, we say that we're the best DevOps company according to us, but the actual talk will be DevOps, a search for a better definition, and I added the quote that I try to live by: having no destination, I'm never lost, by Zen philosopher Eco. So a little bit about myself. I'm Yair Etziony. As you can see, I have 80s IBM t-shirt, one of a kind. I'm head of operation for Polar Squad Germany. Polar Squad is a consultancy agency from Finland, experts in anything that is SRE and DevOps. I have around 25 years experience, mainly doing quality assurance and DevOps and system administrator work, originally from Israel, but right now living in Germany. I studied German history of thought. I'm one of the organizers of the DevOps Berlin Meetup group, actually make music, and this is my Twitter if you feel that I'm interesting and not just talking jabba jabba. So let's start. So like every story, I believe that this story needs to be told from a personal point of view. And my personal point of view is that in 2014, I decided to never work again in the world of IT and software development, or high-tech as we call it in Israel, and decided that I'm a professional musician and that's it. I moved to Germany a year later with no aspiration of working at all in the field, but life is life, and I found myself working in Berlin in various startups as quality assurance engineer, but there was a new role coming called DevOps Engineer. So I did a bit of research and I found out that at least the way it perceives is some sort of a system administrator, just with new cool tools. And I said, okay, I can do that. I worked with hypervisors, I worked with containers in the past. And all the roles I did were basically not so interesting until I met Polar Squad. We have a heavy metal logo, as you can see. And I was hospitalized with a stone in the kidney, and I started to really add a lot of free time and a lot of bandwidth, but nothing else to do. So I watched a lot of videos, read a lot of articles, and started to think about things. And before I want to go forward about my research, I'm an historian, so I will give a bit of historical background. So the first thing we want to talk about is we moved from sequential way of doing software, like V model, waterfall. We moved to this kind of a agile or loop, feedback loop kind of a thing that looks a bit like the infinity, but this is very sequential. So this is the first thing, like how do we get into the situation of having this? And let's talk about it a bit. So now we have, we moved from waterfall to agile. And then we moved from buying hardware. I'm old enough to know that we used to buy hardware for the servers. It took us sometimes 2 months to get the machines to Israel. Then we moved to hypervisors, a virtualization. Now we're thinking in terms of services, containers, but even deeper than that, we're buying services. So another thing that is changing the way we think about what we have and gives us more opportunities. Another thing is the version control. Git changed the way we're thinking about version control, and it's slowly starting to fuse devs and ops, the biggest enemies ever. And what we're starting to see is standards and API-driven work and automation. Of course, when you have all this together, you start to see the picture from the technological side. Okay, and a little bit more historical background. So in 2003, Google started the reliability engineering team. The idea is what happens when an engineer needs to work in an operation, kind of a society, area. So that's sort of a way of looking at things. 2009, Flickr deploys 10 times a day. They were looking for ops who think like devs and devs who think like ops. And in 2009, Patrick Dubois started asking questions and trying to build a community in Twitter around the idea of agile system administrator, and somehow he created DevOps. DevOps, okay. So another thing that we remember from history is the integration L. Since I was a quality assurance engineer and integration specialist in a couple of companies, it was always the last integrations that were the most horrible. Like there were days, weeks where people were just losing it. And we really want not to see this stuff. This is really bad. And this comes from the sequential way, because you move the software from parts to parts, but at the end of the day, the devs takes the binaries or the code and they throw it through the fence to the operators, and operators needs to install it. And this is create an unbalanced situation between those two powers. So now we want to ask ourselves, what is DevOps? Like, what's the most common, at least, definition? And the definition that I know is this one. DevOps is a loose set of practices, guidelines, and culture designed to break down silos in IT development, operation, networking, and security. Sharing and collaboration are at the front of this movement. So, and we always have this nice build, code, plan, have fun thing. And these are the 5 pillars of DevOps: culture, automation, lean, measurement, and sharing. I can share the slides later so you can read it, but it's common fact, or at least it's very known. So now comes the creature that would implement all these things, and his name is the DevOps Engineer. And who is he, by the way? What's his story? So DevOps engineers, are they sysadmins or not? I don't know, but if you try to hire a DevOps engineer, you will fail because you might hire the wrong people. Because a lot of the times you're building a silo within your organization that is just a DevOps kind of a silo, but what is it really? And the last thing that I noticed is that the role of DevOps engineer it's actually empty. Everybody defines it the way they want, and nobody actually knows what it is. Most of the time when I worked as a DevOps engineer, I was just a system administrator. But if they want to hire a system administrator, why do they hire a DevOps engineer? Okay, let's see. So one thing that is super important, if you need people that are expert in AWS or Docker or Kubernetes, you will find them. But are these people connected to DevOps? It's a question. We'll try to answer it soon. And there are rules around that make sense. For example, cloud architect or an SRE or an infrastructure engineer or a system administrator that is working in the cloud. That's fine. But what is the relations between those roles and DevOps? And an important question I ask is, how can you engineer culture? I mean, they tried to do that in China, in the Cultural Revolution. It didn't work. So I think we have a problem here. And what does it mean to actually engineer culture? And who should engineer culture? Yeah, Colossus maybe? I don't know. So, and another question I ask is, DevOps and sysadmins, what's their relation? So if you want to have a DevOps transformation project, why do you hire sysadmins? And yeah, from my experience, most of the time I worked as a sysadmin and not a DevOps engineer. I was an SRE, but I was a sysadmin. So let's give 2 examples of a job offer. So this is a classic job offer I get quite a lot in Berlin. I don't know about Tel Aviv, but strong experience working in the cloud, experience with the Terraform, experience with containers, Docker preferred, Python, Golang, Ansible. Okay, but where is this job is for the definition of DevOps engineer? I'm not sure. Here is a better job from my perspective. So Netflix are looking for a senior resilience advocate, and notice focusing on the people within the company. Netflix as a socio-technical system is formed by the interaction of people and software. And there's always the idea of ongoing change. So I think this role much more is fitting to the definition of DevOps we had. It's not saying you don't need a sysadmin or a cloud engineer. It doesn't mean you don't need to be at the cloud, but it says one thing: you need to take care of your culture. And the question we in Israel like to ask is, why like this? So a lot of the times we like to solve problems with numbers. Let's just do 6 DevOps engineers, boom, solving all your problems. Then we have Brooks' law. When you add manpower to a late software project, you will make it later. And the third one is, a lot of companies, they don't reflect on what they want to do. and they don't ask why we're doing it. But why? So we confuse the methodology with the praxis. We confuse a philosophy of software with how we want to release software. DevOps is a methodology, and it doesn't mean you need a DevOps engineer to actually create it. And from my experience, there's a good chance that if you have a DevOps engineers team in your organization, you're not doing DevOps at all. And I would even add that if you have a really good DevOps engineer team, at some point they will automate themselves out of the work. So in a way, hiring DevOps engineer, I don't know. And the key metrics, I will go this, it's less important, but the key metrics are delete time, deployment frequency, time to restore service, and change failure rate. For me, these are the most important key metrics about the DevOps methodology. And now I want to take it a bit to another place and ask a question. Just a second. Because there's also the historical shift, and there is also one definition that is the definition that comes from above to down, but there's also the way people look at things. So when I was in Berlin in 2015 and started to look for DevOps role, the tools that were associated with DevOps were Chef, Puppet, AWS mainly, and Jenkins. Nowadays, I would say it's more maybe Google Cloud, I mean AWS also, but Kubernetes for sure, Helm, for example, and Terraform. So in this case, we can see that there's always a shift. And what will be the tools of 2030? Nobody knows, yeah? But it's still important to understand that the tools of today might not be the tools of tomorrow. And what is not DevOps, for me, all these tools are not DevOps, okay? They're not really part of the DevOps revolution or change. But it doesn't mean we cannot use them in our DevOps journey. They're just not crucial. And now for tools and culture. So in Berlin right now, there's a lot of people that, since they understand that doing things only with technology is not enough, they only go to the other side. And then only culture. And I don't think this is the way, because when you have tools like Kubernetes, you have an amalgamation where both culture is changing. And these are not two different beings. There's as basically one creature. And yeah, developers and operation. So one customer told us, I would like to have an API call and not to open a ticket. And I think this is the place where we want to go together. The whole definition of developers and operators is changing right now. And Kubernetes' Git are changing the way we think about operating in the sphere. And I think very important saying is you build it, you run it. So instead of being a classic operator, I become a platform engineer, for example, not a DevOps engineer, but a platform engineer. And my role is to give the developers the tools in order to have an automatic deployment and infrastructure. And yeah, DevOps and SRE, let's do it fast. Unlike DevOps, SRE is a very well-defined role. It deals with reliability. It's part of the DevOps movement, yet it's older. I think I don't have much more time for this, so I will just jump. And one more thing that is super important about SRE, don't just copy the Google books. You're not Google, most likely, so it won't work for you. Take the ideas. And the last thing I want to talk about is the DevOps transformation. So it's a team effort. Yeah, it's not just one team's work to create it. And this means that it has to come from the management by itself. And it has to ask the question, what are we trying to achieve? Because automation is just half of the work here. We want to change the way people think about things and working together as developers and operators. Don't give up. Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes, you can learn from them. Failure is the best teacher. You should have a good feedback loops, small iterations, and remember, although we want to achieve that, not everything is measurable, and I'll say it again, not everything is measurable, but you want to have happy people at your team doing something they believe in. And of course, asking the right question, like, Would SRE fit what I'm doing? Is Kubernetes what will make my organization better? Microservice, and how is my stuff is future-proof? So I will just jump this. If you don't think about the future, you will be like Lyft, who started to have this in one of their stock meetings. The reliance on AWS brings potential risk for Lyft because of the amount of money they spend every year. And will the journey ever end? No, we're starting the second age of DevOps, and it will never end. It's a constant change in a way. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Yair. It was very insightful and a lot of food for thought.